Hi guys, welcome back to Emulsion. Today I'm going to be showing off not one but three of my Pentax 6.7s that I bought. So the Pentax 6.7 is essentially a massive 35mm SLR that shoots 6x7 medium format film. This compared to 35mm SLR is just humongous. But to be able to shoot 6.7 in an SLR format is like just so accessible. So what mainly attracted me to this camera was the 2.4 105mm lens. This lens is extremely shallow when shot at 2.4. One of the genres that I'm really interested in is fashion photography. I went to London to shoot with Next Models, Models One, another agency called I Am Models that was based in Belfast. Shot 2 rolls of Portrait 400 on this camera. Mainly it was digital because it was such a rush. There's a lot of pressure being on a test shoot for the first time in London with such big agencies. But I did squeeze in a couple of rolls on this camera and they were actually my favorite shots out of the whole shoot. Just because I shot everything pretty much at 2.8 and I was just able to render such depth and color as well through these lenses. I wanted to shoot a lot of close, intimate portraits with it, but when I found out the lens has a minimum focus distance of 1 meter, I was quite disappointed. So to combat this, I bought extension tubes, which you can get like 3 of them, and they just go on before the lens, between the lens and the body. One downside to this is that it changes the infinity focus of the lens. So it's only really useful when you know that you're gonna shoot like portraits or things that are up close. So it relies on an LR44 battery for the mirror to be able to go up and down, which isn't great because if it runs out of battery and you don't have any batteries on a shoot, then you can't use the camera. I have like 6 batteries in my backpack, so that usually doesn't become a problem. But yeah, it is a downfall. The camera has a mirror lockup function. This one in particular doesn't. This camera has a massive mirror slapping up and down, which causes a lot of shutter vibrations. So what that allows you to do is it flicks the mirror up and the only thing firing is the shutter curtain. This means that you can get like a really steady shot at nighttime or just like long shutter speeds. I've actually only shot 2 lenses with this camera, the 90mm 2.8 and this 105 2.4. Although I did buy the camera for the 105 lens, I actually have only shot 2 rolls with it. Mainly because when I got it repaired, I got the wrong lens back from the repairman and I never got it back, so I actually had to buy this lens again, which isn't great, but it's a beautiful lens, and so is the 90mm. There is quite a lot of lenses for this system. There is a 55mm, a 75mm, the 90, 105, 150 I believe, and 200, etc. Not that I think that going above 200 is necessary, but if it's out there, it must be for someone. So another thing that disappointed me about this camera when I first got it was that the flash sync speed is a 30th of a second. This is it could be a deal breaker to some people. It's not too big of a deal for me because I usually shoot natural light, but having a 30th of a second is pretty lame when it comes to flash sync speeds. Like some 35mm cameras have a 60th or 1/125th, or like the Mamiya 7 or other leaf shutter cameras have like whatever shutter speed that your camera goes up to, but 1/30th of a second is pretty disappointing. Although I bought this camera for portraiture, it is a great landscape camera too. Especially if you bought one of those other wider lenses like the 75mm or the 55mm. I can see that being a great setup for landscape photography, although I would set it on a tripod or increase your shutter speed because the mirror is quite aggressive and definitely makes itself present if you're around it, because it's extremely loud too. Not only is the shutter very loud, but the camera is extremely heavy. Just about as heavy as the Mamiya RZ67 or the Mamiya RB67. They're probably around the same weight, although this is just in a different package. One thing that really does help with that is something that Matthew actually bought me, which is this extended grip. Because the camera is actually just flat, it's very hard to like pinch. So having a grip really helps with the weight distribution. I've been on multiple hikes with this, multiple road trips, and the weight has never really put me off. And now I just think that 35mm cameras are just really light. This seems like a normal weight for me. Like if you do go from shooting 35mm cameras to this, it will feel heavier, but it's not something that's ever like put me off bringing it or putting it in my camera bag. So some of my biggest inspirations are Joel Sternfeld, Alex Soth, Paul Graham, and many other photographers that are really well known for their environmental portraiture. A lot of these photographers shoot on large format 8x10 or 4x5 cameras that capture a lot of detail and a lot of depth in the image. Large format Portra 400 can run you between like 10 and 15 pounds per shot, whereas for one roll of Portra 400 is about 12 pounds for 10 shots, which is a lot less scary in my opinion. You can mess up a little bit more and everything isn't taken as seriously. Now we get round to the reason why I have 3 Pentax 6.7s. So anyone that knows me knows that I don't have good luck with cameras, and that definitely applies to this one. So the first one, I didn't even get a roll through the camera. I dropped it down the stairs because I didn't have the strap put on properly. So that was not a fun lesson to be learned, but it had to be done. Then the second one that I had a lot of issues with the mirror locking up. So that when I pressed the shutter just stayed up, or the mirror just stayed up, and I had to like take the battery out, put it back in again, do a bunch of things to get it to come back down again. So I sent the camera off to be repaired. I got it back and it worked for a couple of months, and then the same thing happened again. So that led me to buying my third one, which hopefully is the last one. The light seals need replaced. I've had a couple of light leaks in the first couple of rolls. Hopefully that's the only thing that's wrong with it. And I also bought this 105 lens, so this is a completely new setup. It's just so unique that I don't really think there's anything else that rivals it. It's just a dream to work with. Moments that I don't think I'd be able to capture if I had to look through ground glass, like look through a waist level, or compose it any differently than bringing it up to my eye and being able to meter in camera and focus so quickly. This was a shot that was like completely off the cuff, and I just kind of guessed focus by how far he was away and took the shot. I don't think I would be able to get that if I had to compose it through a waist level. There's also lots of portraits. I can't name one in particular because I take so many with this camera, as most of them are shot at like 2.8 and have a lovely depth of field. But I would definitely recommend picking up this camera and giving it a go, especially with the 105 lens. It is the dream lens for portraits and seems familiar to 35mm photography, but you just want like a juicier neg and more resolution, more depth. I would definitely recommend Pentax 6.7. So until next time, I've been Lewis, this has been Emulsion, and I'll see you next time.